Was Epstein doing glyphosate research? Wait a second. Oh my goodness. I saw a short video this morning talking about glyphosate and the issues that have been brought up for farmers. So I wanted to do something a little bit different here and just dive right into it with you. So what the heck is glyphosate anyways? AI says it's a widely used herbicide that kills certain weeds and grasses by blocking an enzyme essential for plant growth. It's commonly used for agriculture, forestry, and lawn care. Here's what we need to look at. We need to look at something like the EPA. We need to look at NCBI and the effects of it. Not going to go to the FDA. Well, let's look at the FDA, what they got to say. It's probably, if I had to guess, saying it's totally fine for you. Glyphosate, NCBI, National Center for something to do with accredited research and stuff. Glyphosate toxicity, carcinogenicity, and target effects. All right, we'll take a look at those. Relevance to public health 2020, metabolites and degrades in or on the commodities listed. So it can cause some issues to what it's applied to as well. All right, let me skip real quick to what the FDA says because it can't be amazing. Feel free to check this out on your own. I will leave everything I possibly can in the description below. But if you want the full comprehensive, everything that might not actually make it into this official episode plus some, go over to my Patreon. That link is down below as well. So the FDA, what do they say? Glyphosate is a widely used herbicide that can kill certain weeds and grasses. It works by blocking an enzyme. It's primarily used in agriculture, forestry, lawn care, and garden care. What's the FDA's role in it? Well, I know that they have approved certain other things to the nanoparticle of being healthy or okay to consume, like chlorine and fluoride, apparently, which have no health effects, do they? Yep, exactly, right here. Do not exceed the limits established by the EPA, which we have next that we'll take a look at. So yeah, there's a threshold of toxicity and poison that you can be exposed to or can have access to in your bloodstream or in your consumption until it becomes something they're not willing to take responsibility for. That's what it seems like. Let's investigate further. The Environmental Protection Agency. Is this really protecting the environment? I get it. Squash bugs stink and they eat all your plants. Same with cutworms, but they are part of nature. All right, EPA is responsible for limits of the amount of the pesticide residue a food can contain. So does this inherently imply that you've got pesticide in your food? Yes, it does. Tolerances are set at levels that provide a reasonable certainty of no harm. But what is reasonable certainty when there's no glove that fits everybody? Just saying. Apparently, there's so much glyphosate a person or an animal can have on their corn, soybean, oil seeds, grains, and some fruits and vegetables, ranging from 0.1 to 400 parts per million. A lot of that stuff's not good for you anyways in your diet. So maybe we got to dive deeper into the lies of the food pyramid. Are there any safety concerns the FDA has about it? Let's see. Oh, no, the EPA has about it. They claim that it has low toxicity for people. May risk digestive or intestinal problems. Yeah, that's kind of a big deal. It's not likely to be carcinogenic in humans. What the flip? After considering public comments received, EPA released interim registration review decision, which continues to find that there's no risk to public health when glyphosate is used in accordance with its current label. Bro, it's really tough to point the finger on the people consuming, saying that they need to trust you about the amount of glyphosate that you give to them, even though it quite literally says that it could be a problem. Now, I think that's pretty clear what the EPA is saying. Let me just skip ahead here to maybe the toxic effects that are studied on glyphosate. Check this out. Toxic effects on the nervous system. That's a big deal. What else? Let me just skip real quick, just see what we're looking at. Relevance in public health, okay, it's kind of a general overview, what our chemical compound looks like, bunch of stuff. So weed killer products such as Roundup, do we really need to, like, let's look up the warnings, health warnings on freaking Roundup. I guess it is a possibility that some people have jugs of glyphosate around. Let's see. Roundup toxicity risks. They've got to have a warning label on there. Oh, wait, didn't the FDA say that there was no risk to health? Look at this. Roundup exposure can be linked to serious health issues. This kind of goes back to how Mockingbird has set this freaking standard for gaslighting from organizations like this, when that used to be the trusting standard. It is definitely not, because you're just a simple search like this, just a simple asking deeper questions and checking the receipts. We clearly have that there are some serious health issues attached to it. So let's get back into that study. Let's just get into it. Just to be clear, apparently this is primarily talking about the potential of the carcinogenic nature of it. But this is potentially also a biased resource because it's attributed to the EU, which from a UN kind of standpoint, but at the same time, they've banned several dyes that we have over here for carcinogenicity as well. They use different data sets on the long-term toxicity on rodents and could partially explain the divergent views, but methodological differences in the evaluation of the available evidence have been identified. The EU did not identify a carcinogenicity hazard, revised the toxicological profile, proposing new toxicological that conducted a risk assessment for some representatives' uses. So 2 complementary exposure assessments, human biomonitoring and food residues monitoring, suggest that actual exposure levels are below these reference values and do not represent a public concern per se. All right, in this study, it was inconclusive based on the data set that they had. Now, I don't know about you, but if you're spraying Roundup, I'm sure your chances probably go up, you know. And if your neighbor sprays Roundup, or if your apartment complex sprays Roundup and other pesticides, especially inside for cockroaches and stuff, your chances of getting toxic exposure is pretty high. Same with your animals, like cats, dogs, heck, some people got pet lizards. Well, hazard potential is intrinsic and therefore expected to be equivalent to all evaluation. The risk is related to the use of that substance. Yes, I could argue that for many, many things. If you drink too much water, you can drown, apparently. But you also got to study, like, stuff has to be ongoing. You got to have follow-up research on this. So wait, when was this even done? 2017. All right, there's got to be a more recent study. Let's just skip here. Which one was this? 2022. All right, toxic effects of glyphosate in the nervous system, a systemic review. Here you got. It's got an introduction to what it is, all in one resource. Glyphosate also seems to exert a significant toxic effect on neurotransmission and to induce oxidative stress, neuroinflammation, and mitochondrial dysfunction, which I've apparently heard about floating around on the YouTube land. Lead to neuronal death due to autophagy. What the heck is that? Consumption of the body's own tissue as a metabolic process occurring in starvation in certain diseases. So it can cause that. That's pretty crappy. Autophagy, eating yourself. What's necrosis? Death of most or all of the cells in an organ or tissue due to disease, injury, or failure of the blood supply. So it'll potentially cut off blood supply, and therefore your body will eat itself and organs will fail because they're not getting enough blood. Or apoptosis. I'm not a medical professional, but that is the death of cells, which occurs as a normal and controlled part of an organism's growth and development. So it can cause problems with the normal cell growth. Carcinogenic means tricking the cells to not undergo their normal life cycle. They mutate. Wow. As well as the appearance of behavioral and motor disorders. Yeah, I can imagine just being around it, especially using it. Here's how it works. All right. 600,000 to 750,000 tons of glyphosate are used each year, and it's estimated that its use will increase, reaching between 740,000 and 920,000 tons by 2025. What's that stuff that they've been chemical trailing from these airplanes? So the mechanism of action has the ability to block some kind of acid, which is involved in the synthesis of aromatic protein, broken down proteins in plants, fungi, and microorganisms. Makes sense. They don't stink as much. They don't smell. They don't give off a smell to attract other things or each other. That kind of makes sense. It inhibits specific enzymes and phosphate synthesis, which is the penultimate step in the what? Pathway, the acid pathway. Oh, okay. Different smells from proteins, these specific amino acids, as well as decreasing the protein synthesis in general. So that blocks the metabolic pathway, eventually causing the death of the target organism within a few days. Well, no kidding, man. It's killing bugs. What would you expect it to do to people? It's very effective in attacking the system of bugs. Why would it be considered safe for people, especially when we have these kind of amino acids in our system? In animals has led to the conclusion that GBH does not pose a health risk to humans and animals. Moreover, many investigations on glyphosate toxicity in animals have suggested the low toxicity of this compound, the adverse effects of which have only been observed after exposure to relatively high doses. These data led to the classification of glyphosate in the least toxic category 4, practically non-toxic and non-irritating by the USEPA. All right, except in large amounts. Well, if there's large amounts being sprayed every day or every week on crops or being dropped by the gallon loads out of airplanes, that might be a problem. So in soil, glyphosate can bind strongly to its constituent particles and remain biologically inactive, or it can reach groundwater due to its high water solubility. However, repeated applications of glyphosate have been shown to result in a gradual difficulty for its biodegradation in the soil, which could increase the risk of groundwater contamination. Yeah, that makes complete sense. Being more persistent and toxic under conditions of darkness and high water temperatures. On the other hand, while the persistence of glyphosate on vegetation may be only days, Several studies have detected its presence in many foods and crops, even a year after application. Therefore, although concentrations of these residues that persist over time are relatively low, it's possible that due to extensive use, which does happen, may accumulate and become a risk to animal and human health, as they're chronically exposed to residues in the water and food they consume, which is true. It can be detected in organs and urine. In addition, especially in farm animals and farmers, I've got some neighbors that apparently had some farm hands that had a lot of chemicals that they had to be using on their farm and just suddenly died. I'd be curious if glyphosate was involved with that. Let's read on. 60 to 80% of the general population had glyphosate in their urine. Maximum concentrations of 2,3 residues were also detected in Europe by 44% of the population. So, well, of course, they're going to have a little bit lower numbers. That makes sense as to what that other study was kind of talking about. But data on contamination in the environment suggests that acute toxicity may not be as relevant as toxicity from chronic exposure to lower concentrations of this compound. Therefore, the number of publications demonstrating the chronic toxicity of glyphosate in animals and humans has increased considerably. This has led to increased concern. Yeah. I'm concerned to put any kind of chemical in my body, including water and coffee. But in fact, I live on water and coffee. Let's get down to business here. What were the findings? Occupational exposure, not specified. Most of the studies in humans mainly describe the consequences of glyphosate poisoning after self-harm situations. It appears that occupational or chronic exposure to this pesticide may also cause neurotoxic effects, kind of what I was talking about with the farmer farm hands. All right, let's keep it going. Visual memory impairment in Uganda, smallholder farmers have some issues here. But other studies have not found an association between occupational exposure to glyphosate and increased risk of health problems such as nerve conduction abnormalities. Okay, so these results have led some authors to postulate that glyphosate is less toxic to farmers' health than other pesticides. Well, further research is definitely needed, and we're going to do our best to get down to the bottom of it. But here's consideration. The fact that its effects do not appear immediately after exposure, but 1 to 2 days later, it's like gradually releasing or letting out. That could be, this particular calcium binding could be an important predictor of neurological complications in patients poisoned with glyphosate because its levels were increased in the group that was exposed to the substance and that presented neurological alterations. These levels peaked on the second day after exposure. So you spray it on your plants, and 2 days later, that'll spike up in your brain. What's a parenchyma? Parenchyma. The functional tissue of an organ as distinguished from the connective and supportive tissue. So it can reach the sac around the brain, the connective tissue around the brain, and cause maximum brain damage after the second day. That doesn't sound like a chill detail to me. The ability of glyphosate to cross the Better Business Bureau? No, the BBB. What are we referring to here? The blood-brain barrier. So glyphosate can cross the blood-brain barrier. Anything that goes in your brain should be of concern, especially with the rise of Alzheimer's. The study showed that glucose, watch out for that as well, by brain endothelial cells increased after exposure to high doses of glyphosate. Glucose is the main source of energy for the brain and its entry into the central nervous system. Yeah, but if you have too much glucose, that can be diabetic. So an increased availability of glucose after exposure to glyphosate could alter metabolic activity neurons. This investigation also documented a decrease in cellular metabolism, meaning didn't appear to be related to neurotoxicity, as neurite density and formation were not affected by the treatment with glyphosate. But exposure to glyphosate appears to affect neuronal development in the human central nervous system, altering the expression of molecules involved in the growth and maturity of neurons. How does it say in one instance that a decrease in how the cell is working somehow is not having a neurotoxic effect, even though it could be altering that activity in neurons? And then turn around and say it affects the development in your nervous system and alter the proliferation, the abundance of cells. So this doesn't quite make sense here. Even though right here it's saying this effect did not occur when glyphosate was administered alone. What does this mean? Glyphosate and its metabolite induced a negative regulation in the expression of these genes, specific genes, which are responsible for the synthesis of neuronal cytoskeletal proteins and axonal growth cones, respectively. So, all right, it's kind of like gluten. You got wheat, you got certain proteins that go into it that go into something that can cause extreme inflammation in a lot of people, and most people that have gluten sensitivity or intolerance. So this is arguing right here that you got a 1 + 1 equals, yeah, that could be an issue. But this by itself is not an issue. Just don't add this. All right, so exposing to glyphosate induced an increase in levels of mRNA. And here are some of those next to it. What exactly is it? Messenger genetics. They're related to regulating neuronal development. So it increased levels of these that regulate neuron development. Their deregulation by glyphosate could promote neuronal morphological defects, cause change in the correct neurological development, neuron development, which kind of insinuates potentially carcinogenic. There's links to some of these mRNA signals with neurocognitive developmental disorders like autism. So can this cause autism and spectrum disorders in children whose mothers were exposed to pesticides, including glyphosate during pregnancy? Is that what this is saying? There is evidence of the participation of that. So how is that not toxic? I don't understand how that's not toxic. How is that not having a negative effect on people? I'm just saying the quality of life for somebody affected by this is going to go down according to this. And that for a completely normal individual to have brain alterations because of pesticides and to have a decreased level of functionality and will never be able to function or do certain things later on in life that most adults before the early 2000s, before Gen Z came around, can do. You're not telling me that decreased motor function and decreased quality of life is not toxic. So oxidative stress, they have a huge issue. Increased ROS and nitric oxide and LPO. Tumor necrosis factor alpha. What is it saying? Tumors? Come on, man. That's not normal. Injuries caused by glyphosate, such as neuroinflammation or oxidative stress, can cause neuronal death. your brain quits functioning the same level. Leakage of lactate dehydrogenase. LDH is involved in energy production. So if you're leaking energy production and you have a reduction in viability of human cells, assume that your quality of life is not non-toxic. Here it is again, corroborating, supporting the possible involvement of affecting your brain cells' normal functions, your bodies and organs eating themselves, and preventing proper blood flow to them, which can be induced by glyphosate exposure, killing the cells in your body, manipulating and altering cells in your body. All right, here's what's happening in rodents, according to this study. TH immunoreactivity, impairment in working memory, impaired recognition memory, acute chronic exposure, impaired glutamate metabolism, reuptake and metabolic inhibition of glutamine synthetase, depressive behavior. Have we seen an increase in depression and nihilism in our society? I think so. Well, Friedrich Nietzsche has warned us about that. Change in peptide expression, immunoreactivity in the SN hippocampus. So was that maybe autoimmune related? Who knows? Negative regulation of those brain communication pathways, learning and memory deficits, impairment of neurogenesis and plasticity in the mother's hippocampus, alteration in a reduction in maternal behavior, followed by subsequent increase. Wait a second. Is this having a decrease in maternal instincts? That sounds like it needs more research, especially if people have been going down that route as well and increasing their depression. So of course, it's going to have effects on rodents. It's going to have effects on people. Downgraded nervous system expression or development, which this stuff plays an essential role in the process of growth, survival, learning, I assume, instincts. So if this is inhibited, yeah, it's going down. It's explaining itself here. Glyphosate not only appears to affect neural development in immature offspring, but could also alter neurogenesis during adulthood. Neurogenesis is the growth and development of nervous system tissue into adulthood, during adulthood. So yeah, adult females undergo remodeling during the peripartum period to adapt their behavior to the needs of the offspring. And by having an effect, the whole idea is, yeah, that affected their maternal instincts, decreasing the natural ability to help regulate their offspring. Excitotoxicity. Nerve cells suffer damage or death when the levels of otherwise necessary and safe neurotransmitters such as glutamate become pathologically high, resulting in excessive stimulation of receptors. For example, when glutamate receptors such as NMDA receptors or AMPA receptors encounter excessive levels of excitatory neurotransmitter glutamate, significant neuronal damage might ensue. Now, I don't like to trust Wikipedia, but let's take a quick look at what exactly this is over here. There we go. I mean, this will lead us down a whole plethora of rabbit holes. But based on this, it looks like it has a direct effect on the central nervous system. And there are other studies. So 2020 study of the effects of excitotoxicity Still hammering in the brain here. Interest in it. So one effect causes something, and yeah, the studies just keep going. Got it. Let's keep going. Decreased activity of ChatGPT, of glutamate pyruvic transmitter in ChatGPT. Should probably definitely decrease activity on ChatGPT and increase the normal GBT levels. How about that? Why is this a problem? May alter metabolism, decrease the activity. Early and late exposure to glyphosate seems to also affect some other neurotransmission and stuff. So your brain's just ChatGPT. Oh, look at this right here. There you go. Decrease in ChatGPT. You got to put them together. Come on. The brain is essentially decreasing in use, in ability to process memory, anything. Is this, dare I say, atrophy caused by this chemical? That's a big deal. That's a problem. Dopaminergic system. Dopamine is a biogenetic. Wait a second. Dopamine's huge and keeping people on social media. TikTok was banned because it was a Chinese social media situation deal, highly addictive, all that. But all the other ones are still up, running, and going pretty strong. And their research on dopamine hijacking is absolutely still allowed. Heck, there's deals between Microsoft and Facebook and the government. And recently, all right, let's just look this up real quick. 2026 May, glyphosate bill passed. Farm policies. Pesticide protections. What are we protecting glyphosate for? That's the thing, man. It can cause autism. It's part of a situation that can cause autism, central nervous system degradation, neurodegenerative disorders, freaking ChatGPT problems within the natural brain. Come on. So what cause higher anxiety levels, depression-like behavior in animals and people? Not only affects offspring behavior, but maternal behaviors with natural instincts. Here's some effects of oxidative stress and inflammation that's caused by glyphosate. And we just bounce right back over here. It's not just Roundup. We're talking about highly concentrated, most likely massive concentrations of glyphosate and pesticides being protected under this bill. Let's take a look at this. Look, I'm not gonna doubt, right? Taxes, insurance, pesticides, you name the industry that brings a lot of money in, AI coming in to keep the government going. I, from a business standpoint, understand, but that kind of puts this into the oligarch section. Because that's it. That's the care right there. The care is on the bottom line of the dollar, not the people. What are you eating? What are representatives eating? And several of those representatives have clearly had neurological disorders and situations going on. And those that are just not understanding what's going on also exhibit some signs of that too. But that's the thing. That's the thing. So here we go. Let's figure out what this actually means. House of Reps stripped out controversial provisions aimed to protect pesticide manufacturers from the Farm Bill. Make America Healthy Again uprising could have sunk the broader package. What exactly are we talking about here? Allegation that is Roundup herbicide and its chemical glyphosate cause cancer. Dude, we just looked at the receipts. All right? And there's more receipts to take a look at. And the one that was arguing that it didn't have as high of a carcinogenic rate, the EU, which has less than half the exposure we do in the United States. While the loudest arguments centered on only a few of the bill's provisions, the measure covers a wide swath of agricultural department programs around research, conservation, forestry, rural development programs. Yes, where these pesticides are commonly used, according to what we just looked at. However, most of the policies in the Farm Bill were left to be addressed. I'd rather not have poison on my food at all, honestly. I know a lot of people probably feel that same exact way. The bill would increase loan amounts for guaranteed operating loans. Here's the problem with that. And a lot of farms these days require loans. And you require a loan for a lot of land. And if you're in a farm on it, you require a loan. Whoever gives you money, though, controls you. So whoever gives the money and or sells the portfolio to maybe, I don't know, another country, controls you. Controls your land, controls your food, controls your production. That's not really a good thing. Direct ownership loans would be increased. What, politically speaking in verbiage that sounds great, who's that giving direct ownership to? Are we talking farmers? This needs to be a little bit more clear, because if you buy a house, you take a loan on it, the bank owns the loan on that house. They ought not to tell you what you can do inside of your own house that you have the deed for, right? That the bank is not welcome to go into your house and violate your privacy or tell you what you can and cannot do inside of that house, especially if you're not in the HOA. Anyways, all things considered, let's expand on that Farm Bill, shall we? We got a close bipartisan vote. The first time a farm bill has been passed out of the House since 2018 in what? Ohio? AgNet? After a long debate over pesticide policies, the House on Thursday voted to strip pro-pesticide policies from the Farm Bill. Great. They shouldn't have been in there to begin with. You know what I mean? Here we go. Americans sue pesticide makers, preventing states and courts from penalizing the companies for failing to include warnings on their labels about health effects that go beyond those formally recognized by the EPA. Let's go, man. We're looking at that right now. The bill did provide a fix to California Prop 2. You probably shouldn't use it as a lubrication. Makes sense. So it sounds like we've got a stride forward. Some people have definitely voiced their opinion against glyphosate. Now we understand a little bit more about it and its toxicity. So here's what Congress has to say about E15. E15, a blend of 15% ethanol, 85% gasoline, generally cannot be sold during this summer driving season because it does not meet RVP, vapor pressure regulation requirements, and the Clean Air Act. So statute allows the US EPA to issue a temporary fuel waiver for those requirements under certain conditions. All right. So the EPA is going to control who needs E15 fuel, and they've got to go through a waiver process and not go under extreme or unusual fuel circumstances. Look, if you're freaking farming, man, and you need E15, then you freaking need E15, period. Like, why is that a problem? Why would that be a problem? Emergency fuel waivers allow the year-round sale of E15 to meet any projected temporary shortfalls in the supply chain. Well, here's the thing. Here's another thing. Because of this war in Iran, diesel's up, fuel went down, and now it is back up. You understand, we're not trying to do like this whole greenhouse gas thing, but we've been pushed into a corner. Farmers have been pushed into a corner. You know what? Let me save that. I'm gonna end up sharing all these receipts with y'all, everything I possibly can, over on Patreon / the description, what I can fit in the description. All right, let's add to this. 2026, let's just look at what farming in the USA issues are. Skip the AI overview. Forget AI. Let's use our own noggins, our own built-in natural chat GBT, not being affected by glyphosate, I hope. Announces Farmer Rancher Freedom Framework. Freedom Framework. Why weren't our farmers free to begin with? How about that? What, like, all right, cutting staff of USDA or farms? Was it USDA? That's not a farm. All right. Well, it's just, oh, can't find the server because probably my VPN or something. Awesome. Or the USDA's down. Got Doge to them or something. 2026 Farm Miles Bill. There you go. Let's check it out. A little bit of left. National Security Act for Farm Food and what? I gotta follow this more closely. What in the world? Take a look at that. We got some calls to action. Scholarship pro. Is there a scholarship pro? What are we doing? Getting kids into get more freaking student loans so they can go get into more debt, buy a brand new tractor that's going to break on them, that has planned obsolescence, going to shut down, that they can't even fix, that they can't even apply anything that they learned, and then be stuck at the mercy of being in debt, and then be controlled by whoever funds them. I don't know, just assuming based on the trends. All right, we're looking at amending the Farm Bill. What happened from March till April? So the amendment is just renaming it. This amendment caps, not to be confused with corrective action plan, the admin spending of national animal health programs in order to direct federal resources to mitigation and surveillance of frontline animal diseases. So they want to limit animal health and instead mitigate problems and survey diseases. Just focus on the diseases instead of preventing them. I don't know. That's what that came across to me. If I'm wrong, let me know. And this amendment requires the Secretary of Agriculture to conduct a study on the effects of Mexico-Canada agreement. Yeah, I mean, that should be looked at. Audit periods, extend audit periods for small, low-risk farm credit institutions, improving producers' access to credit by lowering regulatory costs. Okay, they should also lower regulatory regulations. All right, they should lower the hand they have in it in general. Okay, I think maybe that's okay. All right, how about the full amendment list? Establish an interagency working group led by the Secretary of Agriculture to coordinate a whole of government strategy to protect the economic interests of South Texas producers impacted by Mexico's failure to deliver water under the 1944 Water Treaty. Yeah, but why are we dependent on them to deliver us water? And why do we need to protect our economic interests? Wasn't that an argument made for war a couple months ago? The amendment would insert the text of H.R. 3946, the Fight Act of 2025 at the end of Part 1 of H.R. 39. Dude, they don't make this easy, do they? I bet you it's not even going to be that easy to even freaking look it up. 3946. Here's 7567. Food Act. This must have been the change up. Let's look. HR 7. Strengthening domestic food production supply chains. Sounds good on paper. Regulations. Here we go. Let's just take a look here. Gosh, there's a lot. Glyphosate is not in this bill. Good to know. But what HR 3946, here we go. Congress Fight Act. Here's the bill. Let's compare notes, shall we? Lawsuits, seizures, Fighting Inhumane Gambling and High-Risk Trafficking Act of 2025. Gambling on animal fighting ventures prohibited. All right. Got it. Makes sense. When do we do this? We looked up for glyphosate, didn't find any. How about pesticide? Uniformity of pesticide labeling requirements, that's in there. Lawful use of authorized pesticides, that's what we need to look at. Multiple crop and pesticides use survey. All right, so section 10207. Planned incorporated protectant means a pesticide intended for preventing, destroying, repelling, or mitigating a pest. Yes, that's what pesticide means. Exemptions of pesticide. Administrator may exempt from the requirements adequately regulated by another federal agency, or to be a character which is unnecessary to be subject to this act in order to carry out the purposes of this act. Got it? What else have we got going on? 10202, risk mitigation required for any pesticide registered under this act. So if it's not registered under this act, they're not going to mitigate the risk or require it. But if it is in here, there's a cap process that should be ensued if any of these pesticides are found. That's what I'm getting at, yeah? Let's see. Let's take our time to really understand what this is legally saying about the use of pesticides in agriculture. If it impacts the sale, distribution, or use of the pesticide, got to work with the Secretary of Agriculture and act through the Director of the Office of Pest Management. The data is going to be used, and got to fully consider the risks and benefits of any such actions and measures in a manner consistent with practices established to evaluate the risks and benefits of a pesticide registered under this act. Here's the thing. If it's, we'll take a look at it to the best of our ability, but if it's not registered under this act, then how is it being regulated? And if the FDA and the EPA is saying that glyphosate is not toxic, yet there are several research articles sharing that it is toxic, where do we go from here? When this is a republic and the people, such as myself, that have food intolerances and allergies, as well as my family, and want to see agriculture improved in farming brought back to the US, who determines which pesticides are not toxic and allowed to be consumed by the general public, right? Who has access to the real non-toxic stuff? That's probably my biggest question here, based on what this act is talking about, because it's pushing and allowing pest management and pesticides. But all right, look, if you're a farmer, and I get it, rats, infestations of all kinds of stuff, I understand that completely, right? But putting that stuff on food and then consuming it, I mean, that doesn't sound good for anybody. You know, maybe we got to reconsider how we're mass producing crops. How about that? Who can help and support with that, so that we all can kind of be part of that direction of going, and we can mitigate and decrease the need for certain pesticides and stuff. I don't know, maybe that's a thought. Review of pesticide under this act. Endangered species have to be considered. Oh yeah, that's right. Uniformity of pesticide labeling requirements. All right, so we got to have a consistent label of pesticides. Here's a lawful use of pesticides. So we're going to have to take a look at what this act has to say as well. Other regulatory reform provisions. All right, so that act is directly on the EPA website. We've got to take a look at what our labeling requirements are. Packaging worker protection standards, broadly applicable worker protection standards. You got to work to reduce the risk of illness or injury resulting, which implies that there's a risk of illness and injury by being associated with any kind of exposure of these pesticides. Which, how over here can it say that it's not toxic? A pesticide's got to be registered. EPA has the authority to issue permits for what? And collect information necessary to register a pesticide and experimental use related stuff. States cannot issue permits for pesticides. The EPA does. Use of restricted use pesticides. Restricted use, we got to get a list of that. Unlawful acts like distributing or selling not registered pesticides, operating with a registration that is been canceled or suspended, detaching, destroying or defacing any required label, refusing to prepare, maintain, or submit any required records, and refusing to allow any entry, inspection, or copying of records or authorized sampling. Of course, it makes sense. Audits need to happen on dangerous chemicals. Here we go. Government is attesting and determined to have competent federal employees to use or supervise the use of restricted pesticides. In theory, that makes sense. EPA's enforcements will happen. Criminal penalties. All right. So here we go. This is important for those that are advocating against glyphosate and that may need to take this the next step further. We talked about corrective action. Check this out. They're going to have financial fines. They're going to have imprisonment, not more than a year. And depending on the level of criminal fine here for these pesticides, it actually seems quite low for how drastic, for instance, the effects of glyphosate can have on somebody. Can kill brain cells and cause autism and stop maternal instincts. This actually sounds pretty low compared to the lifelong detrimental effects that some of these chemicals can have on people. Just saying. Not to mention getting a loan for their own fines or whatever to themselves. All right, let's take a look at pesticide enforcement policy and guidance. See if they got a list here. Here's how they evaluate the process of pesticides and their risk assessment. Apparently, FIFRA is your federal act and regulation. Your FDA or your FFFDCA requires for pesticide tolerances that will result in a residue in or on food or animal feed to determine a maximum permissible level of pesticide residue. Meaning there's definitely pesticide residues, especially on farm feed. Some kind of improvement act for registration, Endangered Species Act protections and stuff, the label, compliance enforcement. All right, let's look at compliance information. They're all over the place. What is the lit? I should probably just look that up instead of just looking at this junk. List of EPA banned pesticides. It's just, that might help. EPA restricted use products. Let's go. RUP. Restricted use products report. Registration number, all of that. Pesticide questions, send it to this email. Yeah, I got some questions. I do have some questions. I'm not convinced I'm going to get an honest answer at this moment, but let's take a look at this list. Whoa, restricted use product summary report. There we go. This is some good information. I'll just scroll through it a little bit. You can pause the video if you're interested in one of these and can do a little bit more research on your own. The main one on this video that we're looking at is glyphosate. Why don't I just skip ahead? This will be linked down below / on My Patreon. All right, glyphosate, expert herbicide. Let's see. That's where we're at. Glyphosate is here. Syngenta Crop Protection LLC. What do we got? 10% in active ingredient. All right. Whoa, they make a lot of stuff. Let's look them up. Protect your corn crops. Crop protection products. Herbicides, soybeans. Wow. Oh man. Let's take a look. Oh no. Expert herbicide. That seems to be the product name. Let's take a look at it. If we can find the label, that would be even more interesting. Nothing. What? That's strange. Tools and services. Crop protection. There we go. Products. Herbicides. Oh boy. Here we go. It's got all kinds of active ingredients in it. You might be able to search it that way. Is there any? There's not a good search function here. All right. Glyphosate. Here we are. This right here, glyphosate tolerant corn. Hold on. Acuron GT. Be careful of this one. Longer lasting residual on glyphosate tolerant corn. So apparently corn is GMOing to be glyphosate tolerant. Interesting. Broadworks. What do we got? Managing glyphosate resistant broadleaf weeds. It's an excellent tank mix partner to strengthen burn down and residual weeds. So burning down your crop field, your weeds and stuff. Okay. It's not too good. Callisto GT, active ingredients, glyphosate. This is also a weeds and grasses broadleaf weed control, post-emergence application plus residual control. Now, the Curion, let's see. Let's look here. This one had glyphosate, and this knockdown of corn. So trying to get rid of corn, but they're growing corn. Okay. All right. Definitely interesting. Hold on. Wait a second. Hold on. This is the banned list of frickin' EPA. We just discovered something. S-metolachlor, isopropyl salt, glyphosate, and atrazine. Guys, we got a 50-50 matchup here. Holy cannoli, guys. Okay, let's take a look here. Mesotropine, okay. But that also, all right, so that's for glyphosate resistant folks. Animal, all right. Glyphosate, so dude, there's something about this combination plus glyphosate being in there. Let's look up approved pesticides. So that was the rep. Here's the approved one. Search for a product, search for insect repellent. You know what? For any type of product, we need to know. Geez, this looks janky. I would like to know glyphosate. Watch me get in trouble for just simply looking this stuff up. I'm just trying to learn what the truth is behind this. And look, oh my goodness. Okay, so only one of the banned herbicides from that other company had glyphosate in it. In fact, there were three products that had glyphosate in it that were still on the market by this other company. And glyphosate, I mean, those are the receipts. There's just right there. This is all public information. All right. Look at all this approved glyphosate, up to 41%. All right. This concentration can get pretty dang high, it seems. What do we got? Glyphosate, 97 flipping percent. You know what? Back in the day, non-toxic, back in the day, spraying for weeds and spraying for bugs. There's a non-toxic brand. There's supposedly a non-toxic brand. It's supposed to be safe for you kids. Now, it's got me asking and questioning it like crazy. Pesticide? No, it wasn't that. It was something like it was like a guy on the logo. Yeah. It was something like this. Neem oil. Maybe it was herbicide. Do you notice that? This can be used, glyphosate can be used herbicide and pesticide. I'd just be curious what is inside of these labels. Just simply curious. Vinegar, organic, espoma, natural armor, weed, green, eco smart. I don't know, sounds decent. Let's look at this. It says glyphosate free. Okay, there you go. But what else does it have? You know what I mean? Like, there's got to be something else in it. Let's just go ingredients. Rosemary, sodium lauryl sulfate. Inert ingredients. What are inert ingredients? Does that vinegar? Why do you need all the rest of the ingredients? That's probably my main question, especially if food is going to have all 20 billion ingredients and the number one ingredient, the main 90% ingredient is freaking high fructose corn syrup. Like, what's all the rest of the ingredients for? Really? Like, really? So it doesn't, like, really, you know? So anyways, it looks like there's a huge list. All right, we got a lot of work to do. If you are feeling passionate about banning glyphosate, you got a whole list right here to go after. Yep, because based on our study over here, that's pretty jacked up, and that was only one resource. Let's take a look at a couple more resources just to back it up. Excitotoxicity in the central nervous system, that can be an effect from glyphosate. So, influx of calcium ions into neurons leading to activation of various cell signaling pathways, oxidative stress, mitochondrial dysfunction, and ultimately cell death. You don't want that happening in your brain. What could happen if that happens in your brain? Central nervous system disorders, stroke, epilepsy, traumatic brain injury, neurodegenerative diseases, other neuroinflammatory conditions, that sounds horrible. What else? Let's do glyphosate, PubChem, glyphosate, active ingredient. All right, here's the structure. Chemical compound, it's peptide. Peptides have been linked to, I recently saw something too on this, peptide linked to Alzheimer's. They're like protein buildups that can turn into plaque in the brain that can cause a lot of issues, especially with delirium and Alzheimer's. That might be something to explore as well. But glucagon-like peptide 1 receptor agonists are medications designed to help the body regulate blood sugar levels. Now, here's the thing. Oh, we got to do some research on that. There's some fraud around Alzheimer medication research that's important to take a look at. But yes, that is peptides in the brain. And here, that's what we see here in glyphosate. It's affecting, or has the ability to affect the brain. Heck, it may or may not be associated with the propensity of an increase of Alzheimer's especially because of the increase of the use of these kind of chemicals. There's all kinds of cool chemistry facts. If you want to know a little bit more about this and really go into the quantum mechanics of it, because that is awesome. That kind of stuff normally would keep me up at night. This one would probably keep me in my grave if I got exposed too long to that. So I am gonna just triple check another resource. Here we go. Gastrointestinal effects, body weight effects, depressed body weight, chronic duration oral exposure, of course. But if you're breathing, I assume that would also have a similar effect. Hepatic effects, increased liver weight, increased serum markers of liver effects. Renal effect. What the heck is renal? I have a decreased urinary pH, increased gravity, male rats, ocular effects. So, what is ocular? Eyes and vision. We're going to have a what? A decrease, an increase in eye pain. Okay. Developmental effects, suggestive evidence, maternal preconception, exposure to glyphosate, increased risk of spontaneous abortion. Wow, there's definitely a political agenda to be questioned there. Hold on. Was Epstein doing glyphosate research? Wait a second. Oh my goodness. He was following glyphosate and how it generated 3.5 billion in sales. Proving my point earlier. Oh no. Oh no. Why was this being followed? Oh no, it said it was right there. Page cannot be found. What happened to it? What do they do with it? Oh no. Oh no. We gotta find it. Oh man. What's this gotta, oh boy. What are we gonna find? Hold on. Probably gotta go into the actual document. Where is it? Dude, y'all saw that. What was written? I don't even know where to start here. Main document, notice documents. Is this what it is? I think so. What is it? 1202? No, that was not it. 0743. So just, oh man, holy cow, dude. Glyphosate. Why was this? All right. We need 0743. All right. 07433. That is what this whole thing is. All right. Number 115. All right, let's just do 115. That's 1115. So that's not what we're looking for. Oh man, dude. What the heck though? What happened to it? Unsealed document. Oh boy. It says it's right there, but y'all saw it. It wasn't like, if this doesn't open, it'll be on archive probably. Yeah. I'm not gonna download it directly. Display anyways. Full text. Look at the full text. There we go. Glyphosate. Glypho. What the heck, guys? She further claims this to many other powerful men, including glyphosate poison being fed to numerous American politicians. But we gotta like that. What the heck? Like that's an out of the blue thing to even, dismiss. All right, Buckley's and tank collision. Where are we at? A claim of defamation? Of course. Privilege of applies to protect from the claim of defamation. Of course, this court grant her motion. Jury pool. Wait, what? Poison in a jury pool. In this case, get it. It's a term. All right, looks like we're at a dead end as far as that piece goes. New York, Virginia, so maybe it's in a completely different. No. Does the DOJ have anything about glyphosate on anyone? Because we just clearly saw it was in the Epstein files. Antitrust division. Okay, well, there you have it, folks. Economy wise, that's having an effect. There's some definitely some lawsuits going down as far as glyphosate goes. What's this? 2026 Supreme Court. This is recent. Question presented preempts a label-based failure to warn claim where the EPA has not required the warning. Did we just take a look at that? Sure you do. Yeah, look. Isn't Missouri farmland poisoned with chemicals? Isn't that didn't Sean Ryan just recently interview a guy over there? Risk from contamination by forever chemical. Yeah, there you go. Yep. So makes sense why this is up here. Let's glyphosate report of the Cancer Assessment Review Committee. Well, we should look at that, man. Toxic substances, peer review, Office of Prevention. Geez, this is a juicy find here. Superior Court situation in Missouri. Human carcinogen. Was story report 50 mice fed extremely high doses, kidney tumors. Yep. EPA classified glyphosate causes cancer. Right, finding that glyphosate does not pose unreasonable risk. Yeah, we actually just talked about that, dude. Okay. As part of that review, EPA analyzed glyphosate's effects on human health and environment, considering hundreds of studies on everything from glyphosate's effect on the bluegill sunfish to how much glyphosate lingers in asparagus. And then we freaking eat asparagus, and some people go for bluegill if they're trying to save endangered species. This is a double standard. That's what it's saying. I'm with it. I like the receipts we're seeing and we're finding here. We should carry a toxic to fish warning. At least, yeah, it is toxic to fish. Product should carry a 12-hour restriction on entering the application area. That's interesting. Yeah, definitely interesting. Okay. A working group at International Agency for Research on Cancer. That's pretty big deal. Thank goodness this individual is putting it in here. Glyphosate is probably carcinogenic to humans. Makes sense. We were just looking at some of these studies. Periodic reevaluation process and reaffirmed that the strongest data support the conclusion that glyphosate is not likely to be carcinogenic to humans to EPA. But 2017 issue paper 114 in EPA stated that this cancer process lacked peer review, ignored key studies, considered not appropriate studies involving worms and plants, and has been rejected by other leading into, well, when you test it on worms and plants too, that is important because that is what also will be affected by this and helps with agriculture and farmland. So, yep, that, okay. EPA's got an interesting take on the argument here. Continue to stand behind its robust scientific evaluation. Yes, yes, yes. Current re-registration process for glyphosate remains ongoing. Yeah. But glyphosate-based Roundup products remain registered without any cancer warning. Yes. They maintain their ground, but at least it's a duty to inform. So that's really what this lawsuit's about. Contained a chemical, not glyphosate, known to the state of California to cause cancer. All right. So, permitted manufacturing, really distinguishable from a disclaimer about this belief specific. Yeah, I mean, if California's got some stringent laws about everything, about oxygen in it of itself, and then we'll go and commit fraud on a mass scale. It's just quite interesting that a study on the effects, carcinogenic effects on plants and worms would be so highly criticized by the EPA, and a lot of the things passed in California would be totally backed and not even questioned. Going back here, cancer effects, carcinogenic potential of glyphosate has been evaluated in 6 meta-analyses. Number of case control and cohort epidemiological studies. Glyphosate, positive associations between glyphosate use and selected cancers. Hematopoietic cancers. What is that? Relating to or involved in the production of lymphocytes in cells of blood, bone marrow, spleen. Wow, that's lymph nodes and lymphocytes. That kind of cancer from glyphosates, that's actually a big deal. Most of the case study and cohort studies use self-reported never glyphosate use as the biomarker. And subjects were likely exposed to other pesticides as well. Numerous studies reported risk ratios greater than 1 for associations between glyphosate exposure and risk of non-Hodgkin's lymphoma or multiple myeloma. However, the report associations were statistically significant only in a few studies. Yeah, but they were there. Okay, some folks, different strokes. Herbicide formulations. Yeah, animal studies in which glyphosate-containing herbicide formulations were tested. I mean, animals are going to drink the water. They're going to breathe the water. They're going to rub up against it and then clean themselves. We're talking chickens, cows, dogs, birds, fish, hematological effects, body weight effects, hepatic effects, renal effects, reproductive effects. If that's going to have effects on animals, it is definitely going to have an effect on people. So look, what does the EPA actually say that is a legit exposure to glyphosate that's relatively safe? Oh, glyphosate lasting so long on surfaces might be one reason for its toxic effect. The amount of its use on weed control and all exposure to all substances, in particular glyphosate formulation. There's so many different variants of glyphosate content. Yeah. Okay. Exposure to the general population via food or water sources with measurable glyphosate residues most likely involve glyphosate and or its breakdown products rather than the intact glyphosate-based formulation. Health effects data associated with oral exposure to glyphosate technical are considered relevant to potential derivation of oral MRLs for glyphosate. Yeah, if this is in water and affecting fish, it is, and we're recycling water, and God knows who flushes what down the toilet, and then that gets recycled and all of that. I mean, I guess there's a chance for ingesting it, and that makes this even worse, in my opinion. Minimal risk levels. Let's look at that. It's not showing up on your screen. All right. Basically, what I'm seeing here is that there's insufficient data for inhalation, but definitely data for oral exposure and topical exposure, and intermediate duration can have an effect. And there's more information. We want to go deeper into it. Man, glyphosate. Let's just look at one more research. NIH, glyphosate toxic effects 2026. Just, cherry on top before we push this thing out there. Glyphosate formulations, toxicological profile, glyphosate. Let's take a look at that. Disease control, there it is. It's listed on there. Oh, this is that book we were just looking at. All right, so profile for glyphosate. It has toxic health effects in there, some way, shape, or form. It is peer-reviewed and describes the substance's toxicological properties. I think that's pretty dang clear. 2020 says it right there. Even though the EPA in that lawsuit didn't they say it was lacking peer-reviewed studies? Look, just looking and seeking the truth here, and it looks like we're finding it. If you're wow. Let's look at cancer. It's all like right under our noses. The truth. Lympho backs up what we read earlier. Primary literacy. There's a positive association with lymphoma and glyphosate. There was also meta-analysis for other related cancers, leukemia, lymphoma, follicular lymphoma. Some of the diseases were widely indicating uncertain in the point of estimation. So, all right, inconclusive. Working group reanalyzed data, used the most fully adjusted risk estimates for the studies, and estimated a slightly lower meta-analysis relative risk. Of course, if you push the threshold higher, then the risk goes lower. So that makes sense right there. 5 case studies, agricultural health study. The most highly exposed individuals had a 41% more risk of NHL as compared to unexposed controls. So just being exposed, highly exposed, so maybe working with it, having it on crops, on food, on water, whatever highly exposed actually means, had 41% higher risk of NHL. That's horrible. That's horrible. All right. So with that being said, glyphosate seems to be a pretty rampant bad chemical that needs further studies and not experiments done on humans. It seems that there are several health effects that have come out since the increased use of glyphosate as in agriculture and stuff. And it definitely has some linkage to the characteristics of carcinogenic chemicals, and it definitely seems to have peer-reviewed studies on it, and it does definitely seem to have biased views on both parties, and definitely seems to be a big deal in Missouri, especially killing fish, which proves that it's getting in our water, and it's also lingering on crops, and corn is modifying to survive the chemical, and that's lasting a while and a long time. It's causing effects on rodents, of course. It kind of makes sense. That's kind of what it's for. But if it's having that effect on rodents and animals in general, it has to have that effect on us. And when it does have that effect on us, 41% more increased of lymphoma and related cancers, that's hard to argue with. So glyphosate, what do you think about it? What are some extra resources that you found to the table? And what other questions do you have? Leave them down in the comments below. Let's work together to figure out what exactly we can do about it and come up with a solution. I'll follow up with that for sure, because not only does further research need to be done, but action needs to also be done. So let's work together to figure out what that looks like, especially if it's corrective action plan to those that are claiming that this is not toxic. I think that causing cancer and autism are being linked to causing autism is yeah, that's probably pretty toxic. Anyways, those are the receipts. If you want to see more content like that, subscribe. See you in another one.